special guest today is Dan Sisneros, who was just inducted into the New Mexico Boxing Hall of Fame on September 30th and has been involved with the sport of boxing for a long time. And, Dan, we're glad to have you.
Thanks, Ed. Glad to be here, man.
Dan, we had talked about this. You and I had talked on the phone more than once and talked about having you on and to talk about your boxing involvement. And it's a long one. You asked about Channel 26 and the public access, and you had the 8-count boxing hour, that show from 91 to 2015. And it's ironic now, this is Channel 26, and there's content with the city, and then ProView, and then downstairs is Channel 27. So you're back home in a sense. You come full circle without even knowing it. But, tell us a little bit about the Boxing Hall of Fame and the induction ceremony. It was at Roswell in September, and you posted a lot. We have some great pictures here in a little while. But tell us a little bit about that ceremony. I was really thrilled for you. It's an honor to be inducted in any Hall of Fame, period. So tell us a little bit about it.
Oh, totally. I mean, that's the word, is an honor. I mean, I just couldn't believe it happened, really. It's one of those things that I never really thought about since I never boxed. I did everything but box. When I got the call, we were in Disney World, and Louis Burke called me and said, hey, your name's come up again. This is the second time, like the second ballot, I guess. Sandy Pino got in the first time, which she absolutely deserved it. She's a pioneer of boxing, especially for women. And then this time, he said, you're on the ballot, send us some information. I said, well, we're at Disney World, with the granddaughters, and we're having fun. I'll send you what I can when I get home. And next thing I know, they said, Ray Baca, he's in charge of the Boxing Hall of Fame, called me and said, congratulations, you're in. And I just couldn't believe it, And then, I said, well, who else is going in? And he started naming the people, and he says, Rudy Lovato, the boxer from Albuquerque, the bad boy. And Rudy started out with a 8-count boxing hour. He was on my very first episode back in like 1992, I think, or 91. I couldn't believe it. He was getting inducted the same night as me, and that just made it that much sweeter. He says some of the other names, and he says, Joey Olguin, that's my dad's cousin. I didn't even know it. We started researching around, so it was just a blast. I couldn't believe it happened.
You talked about that, about your involvement with boxing, and I told you the reason I love boxing was my old man, my late father, was backyard boxing. Not much formal, but I remember one guy, he said, he just mentioned him in passing, K.O. Sanchez, I guess, knocked my dad out. That's all he said. But my dad, even when he was in his 70s, I'd mess around, he'd still block. But my interest in boxing was because of him.
Mm-hmm.
We'd watch boxing matches together. He was not an Ali fan. And I think because my dad fought in World War II and, Muhammad Ali refused induction, which my dad may have not really known all the issues. I think that might have been some of the thing why he didn't like Ali. But that's okay. Everybody, has their own favorite fighters. But that's where my interest came from, was my father. Mm-hmm. And you didn't box, but so what? You tell us about how because you got involved a lot. I mean, you got VHS tapes, and we'll get into that later.
Okay.
But tell us about your involvement and why you got involved with the sport of boxing.
Yeah, well, pretty much the same thing. My dad, he wasn't like a big sports fan as far as like football and basketball and hockey or anything like that, team sports, but he loved boxing and wrestling. He just loved those two. So as a kid, that was the connection that I had with my dad, and I think that's what made me just fall in love with the sport. And he would take me down to the Olympic Auditorium in Los Angeles, kind of a small venue. And I still remember the first time I walked in there, because after seeing boxing on the TV, the ring looked gigantic. It looked like this big ring. And when I saw it, that little ring in the middle there was smoke in the building, and it was just, I can still see it. And I just fell in love with it. I mean, Danny Little Red Lopez and Bobby Chacon at that time, Hedgemon Lewis, there was just some. Jerry Quarry was there. These warriors,
Lamone?
He would come down and fight sometimes to L.A. Yeah, he was popular with the Mexican fans down there. But it just, I just fell in love with it. I mean, these guys were amazing. You could kind of see them up close, and I don't know. And then he would take me to wrestling too, and that's a whole other story. But pro wrestling and boxing, I mean, that was where I got it. Kind of like you, the love that my dad had for the sport. I guess it just. And it seems to be in the blood with our family too, because it's kind of a long story, but I was adopted, and my older brother, I hadn't really been close with him. When we finally connected, He was a super boxing fan. He was just nuts about boxing, just like I was. I couldn't believe it. And I said, it's in the blood. It's got to be.
When you mentioned the LA Olympic Auditorium,
Yeah.
there's some great fights that have
Yes.
taken. You mentioned some great fighters, and no wonder it got deep into you. It's exciting to watch that. When we cover boxing for ProView Networks, we're right there ringside. We've had blood, sweat.
Yep.
It's exciting. It really is, and it's warriors. There's an art, the sweet science they call it. You've met some great boxers. We got some great pictures. You've met Riddick Bowe, Sugar Ray Leonard, Johnny Tapia, Danny Romero. We can go on and on. There's we'll see those pictures in the second segment.
Yeah.
But we also want to talk about the 8-count boxing hour. What a show that was. And you worked with the legendary Henry Tafoya on some of that, and you guys tell us how that came about, because you mentioned to me it was kind of done. Unorthodox. You're not professional, you said, but it turned out as a professional product, I think. Tell us a little bit about how that came along, because that show is still talked about. Your presenter, Andy Rivera, he's got BoxingNewMexico.com, who's a new site that he's had out for a while, and he's really putting out a lot of great content on there. Talked about that show all the time, along with several other people. So tell us how that show came to be.
Yeah, that, quite a few people have asked me that, and I kind of think back, and how did I get here? How did this happen? But actually, when we moved to New Mexico from Los Angeles, I saw Channel 27 on the cable, and I thought, wow, this is neat. This public access. Anybody can come in here and show anything. Can I show boxing? And I called them up, and they said, sure. You want to start a boxing show? So I did. And like you said, I have just thousands of VHS tapes. I've got, like local fights from around the country that we would trade, and I would build up my collection. So I said, this is a great way I can show these fights that may never be seen. I can put these fighters out there. So I started the show, and I didn't know that some of the guys from the Boxing Commission were watching the show. I didn't know that. And I was at an event one time, I think it was an amateur kickboxing event, and I had my little VHS camera set up on the tripod. And here comes a gentleman, walked up to me, said, hey, my name's Max Abeda. I'm the event coordinator.
Yeah.
Do you know Max?
I've heard the name.
Yeah, the late Max Abeda. He was a dear friend. I just loved Max. Anyway, he said, we've been watching your show, and all the commissioners, we've been talking about it, and, we think you'd make a great boxing judge. And I just what? A boxing judge? Me? He said, yeah, you need to come down and fill out an application. And so he told me the whole process, and I said, let's do it. So I did that. And so I became a boxing judge through the show. And with that show, though, Ed, the thing is I was able to just meet all these boxers, and it's like boxing in New Mexico was like hungry. They wanted you to come and be part of it. Like you can't just say, I'm going to start an NFL football show and be part of the NFL. It doesn't work that way. Boxing, though, is kind of like a niche sport. It's kind of a smaller community, but it's tight. And next thing I know, I'm a boxing judge, and I'm sitting up against the ring at ringside, these boxers that I just respect and love to see in action, and I'm judging their fights, and I couldn't believe it. But the show led to that, and people, they would approach me all the time. Can you put my fighter on? We're having an amateur event. Can you come down? I'd bring the camera and run down there and, videotape the fights. And so it was, the show just, it just opened doors. It opened doors. Next thing I know, I'm writing for boxing magazines, and next thing I know, I'm getting involved, working the corner for Daniel Perez up in Colorado.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
Daniel Pitbull Pettis.
Daniel Pitbull
One
Pettis,
of the best fighters Albuquerque. He's 89-13 as an amateur.
89-12 as an amateur.
89-12.
Yeah, and yeah, he's one of very underappreciated, I think, because he was just amazing. I thought he was really excellent. But yeah, next thing I know, I'm even working the corner with Joe Turrieta, was his trainer at the time.
Turrieta?
Yeah, and
a guy at South San Jose, Jack Conladia now.
Yes, and so I'm making friends, and I'm meeting people. Then I'm writing for Pro Boxing Update. Next thing I know, it's like a snowball going downhill, and it's just building up, and it's just been a fun ride, Ed. I don't know.
Unbelievable. What a great story. It's almost like, the world that opened up for me after I retired as far as media with basketball and football and, the sports that I've been crazy about. I love boxing too. I've been able to do some play-by-play for the Pettis brothers, when they have fighting cards, boxing cards. And gosh, those are always really exciting. But what a world that was opened up for you, and ended with you being inducted into the New Mexico Boxing Hall of Fame. What an honor. Yeah, I got to ask you, you mentioned a lot of fighters: Rudy Lovato, Johnny Tapia, Daniel Pitbull Pettis, Andy Rivera.
You know, and he was that warrior style that fans love. I mean, he would just go in there head to head. He didn't care. You hit me, go ahead. I'm going to hit you back. People love that style. But then what about guys like Louis Burke? You know, is a great fighter. Fought Freddie Roach twice. And, you know, he's another guy that he became a good friend of mine through boxing. And back in those days, yeah, like Danny Romero was coming up. He was just an amateur kid. Johnny Tapia, when I first moved to New Mexico, he was in all that trouble, you know, with losing his license and the drug problems and everything. And it was like, looked like he was done. And then here comes Danny Romero coming up in the amateurs, red hot, you know, looking like he might make the Olympic team. And all this drama was happening, and it's like I was just there at the right time when everything was happening, and New Mexico was, you know, kind of getting onto the boxing, you know, the map for pro boxing. But there was a lot of like local guys that weren't, like Ricky Ortega, I remember, well, Frank Archuleta, Chris Linson from Santa Fe.
Chris Linson was inducted in the Boxing Hall of Fame about 4 years ago.
Yeah, he was an exciting, good fighter, and like, you know, you could go to these local fight cards, and all these guys were really entertaining. They were exciting. They were entertaining. They weren't dancers, and so they built their careers here in New Mexico, and you know, a couple of them went on to fight for world titles and all. A kid named Andres Fernandez. I don't know if you remember him. He came from Mexico, and he was training here. Melchor Chavez was training him.
I remember Melchor Chavez.
Yeah, and Andres, he did some things. He fought on HBO, you know, and I think he fought Bones Adams, I think it was. But there was some fighters that started, like Frankie Archuleta, he started to make some noise, you know, and like they didn't quite get to the top level, but they were very good fighters, really exciting. And I was glad to be part of it. It's just fun. I couldn't believe it, you know.
What a dream. You know, it's like me being involved, what I'm doing now with, you know, retired. Being involved doing basketball, all the things I get to do, my wife says that every day I'm living the dream, and it's true. Dan, we're going to take a break, and then we come back, we'll show those great photos you have. Okay. People aren't going to be able to believe them after these messages on the Sports Desk.
It's intercepted. Touchdown. It'll go the distance. And Jared Meechan
fought Ali, fought Frazier. That left. I had to knocked my quarry out with a hook that I had to watch 4 times to see where it came from. I didn't see it, and knocked him out cold.
Oh my goodness, that was scary. Yeah, that was impressive. Bob Foster, man, I just love Bob. You know, he became a referee with the Boxing Commission when I was a judge. And again, like I was telling you earlier, you know, one of those, I can't believe this is happening. Here I am, I'm the judge, and Bob Foster is a referee for this fight. I'm working with Bob Foster, the great, legendary Bob Foster. When I first moved to New Mexico, I went down to South San Jose just to see what was going on. And I looked and I saw this guy and I go, is that Bob Foster? I could see him in there, you know. And the guy that was like taking people to come in, he goes, yeah, it's Bob Foster. You want to meet him? I'm like, Bob Foster? Yeah, come on. He loves the attention. I walked in there. I'm meeting Bob Foster. It was just so cool. He was in his you know, work uniform with the sheriff's department. Yeah, in there training fighters, and he was. I just love Bob.
I don't know. Do we give him enough credit? I don't know. You know, I was asked that. Should there be again? Danny Romero, great boxer. Johnny Tapia is you know, gold here in Albuquerque. Holly Holm, Sean McLean.
Yep.
There
Austin
were
Trout.
Austin Trout from Las Cruces. We can't forget about him.
No.
Still fighting.
Yeah.
But Bob Foster, man, wow. You know. He knocked down Ali. He got knocked down. There's some great pictures. There's
Alexis Arguello. Yeah.
These are unbelievable pictures. And there's
Floyd Mayweather. That was his third
Pretty
fight.
Boy. Was he Pretty Boy then?
Well,
right?
I think he was.
Not money.
That's at Tingley Coliseum. There's a Ray Boom Boom Mancini. I met him here at
a young-looking dancer.
Roberto Duran. Yeah. That's at Tingley Coliseum. Yeah, that was an honor to meet the great Don King. Yeah.
Only in America.
He's a lot of fun. He's a character. And that's the poster from the Hall of Fame. I just couldn't believe it. Just couldn't believe it. And that's the program from the Hall of Fame.
There's some great pictures we have here to share with you.
Rudy Lovato. I was so honored to be inducted the same night with the great bad boy of boxing. There you see Andy Rivera there on my right, and was it David Finger's name on the left? And there's all the inductees. Yeah, James Myers, Willie Hall Jr.
You know,
what a night.
Yeah, you know, there were some pictures there of Riddick Bowe. You met Riddick Bowe. you've met Sugar Ray Leonard. You've met all the greats. Is there a memory that stands out more? I mean, Duran is my favorite fighter. Him and Ali are my favorite fighters. Manos de Piedra, Roberto Duran.
Yeah.
I have the book Hands of Stone by William Knack, and I think I've read it 3 times because that guy was from the streets and mean as heck, man, right? Supposedly knocked out a horse, and that's where he got the nickname Hands of Stone. Is there a memory? I mean, you mentioned this. You mentioned you met Bob Foster, and you're overwhelmed. Is there a memory that stands out more? I mean, you met them all. Look at those pictures. Is there a memory that stands out more to you? You met Don King, the promoter. Is there a memory that stands out more than the other?
Well, you know, I went to a boxing event one time with my daughter. We were in Las Vegas. The whole family went, but my daughter and I went to this one boxing event. It was at the old Riviera. It was outdoors, and Roy Jones was there. And at the time, he was super hot. He was like the hottest boxer, you know, and I just thought he was incredible. He was amazing, knocking people out and just... So I kind of approached him, and I walked up to him, and I said, "Hi, Roy. I introduced myself, and he's like, "Oh yeah, come on, let's take a picture," you know. And we just kind of hung around at the fights there for a little while. He's just like he was my buddy, you know. And I was like, just wow, I'm hanging out with Roy Jones. This is so cool, you know. And one other thing is, when they had a big fight event, I think it was a Johnny Tapia fight at the Pit, and Michael Buffer was the ring announcer. I think they were ESPN fights, and
there's a picture of you in there with Michael Buffer too.
Yes, there is. There is. So you know, I was going to go meet him and get his autograph and take a picture with him, and people said, no, don't approach him. He's really mean. You know, he won't talk to you. And I said, are you serious? They said, yeah, don't. You probably shouldn't. And I thought, oh wow, okay. And I kept thinking, I'm still going to try. So I walked up there. He was like the nicest guy, and he was like clowning for the camera, and he was taking pictures, you know, signing autographs. And you know Bonnie Greathouse from the Channel 27. So I got her an autograph, and I said, "This is for you, Bonnie." And I mean, Michael Buffer was a blast. So I don't know what that was all about, but that was pretty fun too. You know, that people were saying, "Don't approach him," and he just couldn't have been more friendly.
You know, it's funny. You mentioned Roy Jones, and the only guy that I ever saw have a rap show coming into the ring before a fight. Do you remember that? I mean, I couldn't believe it. I'm like, look at this dude, man. He's having a rap show and dancers, and then he's fighting. And I'd like, come on. You know, to me, that was a little much. To me, and then Glenn Johnson knocked him out one time. But Jones again, one of the greats.
Oh yeah.
And you mentioned your love for boxing, and you served as you also a writer, a judge. You got to be on camera, and really, you know what, Dan, we got to give you a lot of credit for what we've done here. You know, you paved the way for that. You know, for what we've done here at ProView Networks with the Legacy Boxing Promotions. We had a show for a while. You know, that I was a host of.
I remember it.
But a lot of that came from you. So you know what? We're glad to have you on, man. And you know what? We're glad to talk about you being inducted into the New Mexico Boxing Hall of Fame. It's important to acknowledge pioneers, and you got a humble attitude about it. You appreciate the opportunities that you had, and that's great to look back on and share these memories with you. I'm glad we had you on, or had you on. We're not done yet.
Thanks, Ed. No, you know what? I thank the Lord because you know, my Lord Jesus Christ has blessed me, and this is one thing, like maybe some people might think boxing is a violent sport. I don't see it that way at all. I never did. I see it as a beautiful sport, you know, and there's safety factors. The referees are supposed to protect the fighters. The amateurs, they're super protective of the fighters. The pros, bad things happen, yes, but you know, they do their best. These men want to compete, and I appreciate the art, you know, the
Sweet science.
All they put into it, the training. It's like they just don't get the recognition. People just see them on TV fight night, and they think that's all you do. You get fight. You made $10 million just for 45 minutes. If they knew behind the scenes what's going on, they would appreciate it much more.
You know, referee stoppages, Chavez, Taylor, very controversial. Richard Steele stopping it, and and I thought it was the right call. I did. And then Lou Duva coming on the apron going crazy. Duran Moore in '83 should have been stopped a lot earlier. Roberto Duran had really given Davey Moore a tremendous beating.
Yes.
And it's tough. So you mentioned that. The boxers, we've had them on shows. The Pettis brothers, damn, I love those kids.
Oh, I love them.
I love Abraham Pettis, that kid, and Angel, and the family. Jordan
they're
Pettis. They're first class. Aaron Pettis, first class all the way. I think Abraham's going to be a champ. I really do. And not a mean kid at all, but man, he gets in that ring.
Yeah.
So you kind of wonder where ask him, where's that come from, man? But you did so much here for local boxing. Is there anybody you're keeping an eye on for the future? For either here or nationally? Is there anybody that you really like to watch?
Well, I'd like the Perez brothers. You mentioned them, Abraham and Angel Baby. I think they could do a lot. I'm proud of what some of the other boxers, Jason Sanchez and
Fought the other night.
Yeah, and there's just the guy that fought Tim Zhu the other. Can't remember his name. He's a middleweight. I lost his name, but anyway.
Not Trout, right? No, wasn't
No,
Trout.
not Trout, but Austin Trout was incredible. But there's some good fighters. Coming up. It's probably not going to be like the Tapia Romero era. That's an era that I don't know if it'll ever happen again in New Mexico. But what a great time! But there are some good, solid fighters, good trainers. They're coming up. I expect some good things.
How about nationally? I mean, you still got Canelo Alvarez still on top.
Yeah.
Nationally,
David Benavidez. Devin Haney the other night was incredible. Of course, Terrence Crawford, but he's getting a little older. He's getting a little up there. It's kind of, he came on late, but
convincing decision.
Yeah,
against
but they were impressive. Super
convincing
impressive.
decision.
Overwhelming, yes.
But you mentioned that, we got about a minute left. There's only so much you can do. It fights that. We mentioned Ali, a fight against Larry Holmes when he's 38. That should have never been even sanctioned, ever. That still bugs me that it was even sanctioned.
Yeah.
But it's all about the money grab.
Yeah.
Anything you want to wrap it up with, Dan? Again, what an honor it was to have you on this show. Thank you for everything you did for New Mexico boxing. I know I speak for a lot of boxing fans out there. I'm glad to be involved in that sport and the little corner I am. Anything else you want to tell us?
Oh, just thank you for having me, Ed. It's just so nice to be appreciated and for people to know what little I do. I love doing it. And if there's any way I can help the boxers in New Mexico, they can approach me anytime. Boxarchive@yahoo.com. Send me an email. And if I can help New Mexico boxers, I'll always be there for them.
You know what? You did quite a bit. And again, sir, congratulations on your induction into the New Mexico Boxing Hall of Fame.
Thanks, Ed.
For producer Alden Iwani, I'm Ed Nunez. We'll see you next week on the Sports Desk.